its potential to once again contribute significantly to the country's economy. Unfortunately, the industry hasn't had a good run, but will the tide turn? ENCA Money Desk anchor Ropiwa Madzena is at the mining Indaba and is about to find out. Let me take you live to her now. And so, Ropiwa, you've been looking at the trends in mining in Southern Africa, and you're having conversations that link to, what the observations are of ratings agencies and the work that they do around monitoring key sectors of economies. What are you finding?
That's right, Tulas. Key sectors of the economies that these ratings agencies look at. And I've actually got Gregory Rodwell, who's a senior research analyst at S&P Global Market Intelligence. Gregory, many thanks for your time this afternoon. I suppose we could start with talking about South Africa's mining landscape. What have we seen in terms of trends?
So in terms of exploration, people who are going out and looking for new deposits, the budgets in South Africa have stayed about the same, about $97 million from last year. So they haven't really recovered from 2012, 2013, where the budgets were really high, about $300 million. So it's the recovery in the rest of the world has been rather muted in South Africa, and most of that exploration is on mine sites or projects that are very near to construction. So only about 25% of that, about $24 million, is on grassroots exploration.
Right. And what about production levels? Have we seen a decline in that over the last few years? That kind of thing in South Africa?
So in terms of gold, I guess where mining first started in South Africa, production has been on the decline for about the last 20 years. So actually in 2018, actually in 2019, it was the first year that South Africa wasn't the biggest gold producer in Africa. In fact, it was taken over by Ghana, or rather Ghana stayed still and South Africa dropped down. In terms of platinum, PGMs, production is sort of stable and obviously is the biggest in the world. And in terms of iron ore, production is rather stable as well.
Yeah, and what about investment? I'm sure that's also been on the decline over the last few years.
So in terms of capital expenditure, that has been. However, at the conference this week, been hearing a little bit about some more expansions that are going on in the platinum sector. I think Anglo-American Platinum are going to be expanding their Morakwalana mine and also the Dobrochen feasibility stage project. So there is a lot of potential, and certainly looking elsewhere in the world, there are a lot of problems elsewhere in the world, in Latin America, in Chile, Argentina, now in China as well, in Indonesia. So there's certain potential for South Africa to sort of take a bigger role, but there's a few things that sort of in the way at the moment.
Yeah, we'll talk about those few things that are in the way at the moment. I just want to touch on the biggest risk that's been spoken about is Eskom to South Africa's mining sector, actually Southern Africa's mining sector. But water scarcity, isn't that something we should also be worried about?
Absolutely. That's something that's affected the mining industry as a whole, especially in South America and Chile, because their waterfall is very low. So they're having to rejig their copper mines to use salt water directly from the sea rather than desalinating it. That means they have to change around a lot of their processing, but actually they'll be more profitable in the long term. The trouble with the mines in South Africa is they're a lot further away from the sea and a lot higher up. So it's going to be a lot higher cost to move water in. But there's a lot of technology changes that could potentially happen in processing where you could reduce the amount of water being used.
You spoke about a few things in the way of the kind of investment we should be seeing flowing into South Africa. I assume that would be the lack of legislative reforms.
Certainly, just what I've heard from this conference and previously, the difficulty in getting some kind of information is sort of hamstringing exploration. So, for instance, getting information about licensing claims, geology, those kind of things, you really need those to take risks and do exploration. In addition, there's been more sectors where the mining legislation is new, the mining codes are new, there's no real mining ever having gone on. South Africa's got obviously a long legacy of mining, so a lot of the mines that are currently operating are very sort of have very old-fashioned underpinnings. So that's some of the issues that are affecting it. But then the other effects are obviously power, because you need a lot of power for mining. However, you get the same kind of issues in Ghana as well. So I think the sort of certainty is a big thing for the miners, but also I think miners have a responsibility as well to deliver on their promises, because we've had it in Tanzania actually in the 1990s. They had the best mining code in the world, but the mining industry gave a lot of promises and didn't really deliver. So it's sort of both parties have got to sort of live up to their word, really.
Both parties having to come to the party and delivering on their promises. I've been speaking there, as I said, to Gregory Rodwell from S&P Global Market Intelligence about some of those intimate details into the mining sector and the potential that exists for it to create sustainable growth in South Africa.